Clemson files for a partial summary judgment in South Carolina, and the ACC files a brief regarding the stay in Mecklenburg, North Carolina.
The ACC lawsuits are always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to break it down for you.
Great to have you back here on the mountain. We are going to be doing a Clemson-focused episode. A few things that we want to talk about here. One in South Carolina in Pickens County, and one in North Carolina in Mecklenburg County. Let's start in Mecklenburg County, and this is going to be the stay motion that Clemson has put forth, requesting the court and Judge Bledsoe to stay that lawsuit and wait and see what happens in South Carolina. Let the South Carolina lawsuit take precedent in Pickens County. As we reported last episode with our Clemson updates, Judge Bledsoe is ready to hear the motions to dismiss and stay the case in North Carolina, as well as the motion to seal the ESPN and ACC media rights agreements on July 2nd. So we're about a month away from a hearing here in Mecklenburg. But on May 28th, the ACC filed this brief in opposition of Clemson's motion to stay. In this brief, the ACC states four main arguments. Number one, Clemson has filed to meet its burden to show that proceeding forward in North Carolina would cause a substantial injustice. Number two, the ACC's claims are based on NC law and involve matters of local importance in North Carolina. Number three, this court has already rejected Clemson's argument that it is the only natural plaintiff. And number four, Clemson's earlier filed complaint does not outweigh the ACC's choice of forum. And Steve, I just got to say that last one here is the most interesting for me, because now the shoe's on the other foot for the ACC, right? They filed first in the FSU lawsuits. And so they really took that whole, we filed first, we have choice of forum, that didn't happen here. So I was anxious to see what are they going to put in this filing, because they now have to kind of take a different stance and say, oh yeah, we filed second. Again, it was a day, but we filed second. But here's why that doesn't matter, and we're going to get into that. That was the most interesting part of this filing for me. The ACC begins this brief by using the ruling in the Florida State University hearing as to why this case should be heard in North Carolina. They state that the core issue regarding the validity and enforceability of the grant of rights is critically important to all members of the conference. Proceeding in North Carolina will provide the best chance for a legally binding and uniform interpretation of, or for, the ACC, for Clemson, and for FSU. Remember that several legal minds have opined that adding Clemson to this could really sway the courts to solidify this in one jurisdiction, in one state, that being North Carolina. We heard that several times, that the more that kind of add on here, right now we have two, but if there's a third, does that actually kind of lean its way towards hearing all of these cases in North Carolina? There is that opinion floating out there by several attorneys. So let's dive into these four arguments a little bit more deeply. Then I'll turn it over to you. We can have some discussion, and then we're going to get to this partial summary judgment in South Carolina. So number one was this substantial injustice. First, the ACC states that this court has already found that there is strong local concern to litigate this matter in North Carolina. Second, they state that due to the FSU litigation already proceeding in North Carolina, the court should allow this lawsuit to move forward as to follow a single, uniform interpretation of the agreement. Otherwise, there could be differing opinions across 10 or maybe even soon to be 12 different jurisdictions, and that would be the different states in which all of the ACC members reside. Staying this case is an invitation for potential inconsistent judgments and chaos. Number 2, a matter of local importance. The ACC states that Clemson does not dispute that North Carolina law will govern these contracts because the conference accepted the grant of rights in North Carolina. They argue that a South Carolina court could apply North Carolina law. However, that does not mean that North Carolina should simply defer to another state, nor let another state decide issues of North Carolina law regarding substantial injustice. Also, Clemson states that a North Carolina court cannot define the penalty under North Carolina law that would subject them to damages that a South Carolina court might not impose. As the ACC Constitution is a North Carolina contract, North Carolina law should govern whether the withdrawal payment is a penalty. Remember, the ACC is saying this isn't a penalty, but rather an alternate form of performance. And that's very important here if we ever get to a hearing, how they're going to be defining these penalties. So that was the big takeaway here for number 2, was this whole penalty and definition of what this penalty actually is. Argument number 3, the natural plaintiff. The ACC states by saying that this court already found FSU's claim that it was the only natural plaintiff to be an erroneous view. They go on to say that this new slander of title claim that Clemson just recently added to their amended filing in South Carolina was done after the ACC brought this action, and also does not change the real plaintiff in this case. Clemson is the party looking to breach a contract, not the ACC. We heard a lot of that with FSU. I mean, we know, I think, what Judge Judge Bledsoe is going to say about that piece. It is very, very similar to the FSU case. We've already heard his opinion on that. Number 4, the choice of forum. Again, the one that I was most interested to read here, and it was the longest. I think it was about 3.5 pages. The others were maybe 1.5 pages to 2 pages. The ACC does not dispute that Clemson filed first in South Carolina a day before the filing in North Carolina. However, they say this was achieved by using misdirection. This is because the parties were discussing a business solution and agreed to not engage in litigation in North Carolina because they were trying to work through this, between each other and not get the courts involved. The ACC believes that Clemson had the authorization to file against the conference back in 2023 sometime. They cite a Coca-Cola case and a Wachovia case that show how North Carolina courts have disapproved of misdirection aimed at manipulating jurisdiction to gain a legal advantage. The principles of equity lessen any weight that should be given to Clemson's 1 day earlier filing. Also, North Carolina takes a qualitative approach to whether litigation should be stayed in favor of litigation in a foreign jurisdiction. And only one of these factors involves who filed first. Clemson claims that South Carolina is entitled to great deference. However, the ACC says that they have this backwards, as the ACC is the true plaintiff, and they have the plaintiff's choice of forum. I'm going to stop there. I've been talking a while, Steve. I'm sure you have many things you want to go over. So what are you thinking here?
Well, in some ways, this is deja vu all over again, I think is a kind of an apt phrase for this in many ways. I mean, We're seeing a lot of the same arguments being made, especially in those first 3 parts. Clemson did get a kind of a chance to see what worked and what didn't work for Florida State, what made sense and what didn't, and they got to tailor theirs, a little bit different. But I think, like you mentioned, we have a good idea of Judge Bledsoe, how he's going to view those, and what pertinent case law examples he's going to have. Right. That'll be his lens to view those first 3 in. Right. Obviously, number 4 is interesting because it's different this time. Basically, the main argument in the other in the Florida State case was, hey, we filed first, so it's just the way it goes.
Yep.
And in this one, it's, well, it doesn't matter who files first. So that's neither here nor there. So I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, when in one case they filed first, in one case they didn't. So obviously they're going to make arguments for themselves, and they're going to end up being different. So we'll see what Judge Bledsoe thinks of that. I really, my gut feeling on this is, I think if there's any way that Judge Bledsoe can see a path forward to just kind of combining these,
yes,
then in some way he's going to do that, keep the process simple. I think he kind of likes things that way, very clean and neat and simple. So that's just kind of my feeling. I mean, they've made a lot of different arguments and they'll go back and forth. But at the end of the day, just my gut tells me that Judge Bledsoe is going to say, well, we're moving forward with the Florida State case here. This is a very similar case. Basically the main arguments as far as determining the grant of rights and all these other issues are fundamentally the same. And so I want this to be, whether they actually combine the cases or just have them going kind of together in his court, I think he will decide that just, keeps it simple and keeps it neat. So that's my gut feeling on that.
In full agreement, and I'm going to walk through each one of these arguments real quick. We know what Judge Bledsoe is going to say for the most part. Yeah. Actually, I think we know exactly what he's going to say in everything. You can look at the FSU filing, and most of it's going to be the same rationalization to his denying a stay here. There's a substantial injustice. Of course there is, or there could be. So they're not going to get a stay for that. Local importance, he already ruled on that. He said, yes, there's local importance in North Carolina. We already know the case there. Natural plaintiff, I will put natural plaintiff and choice of forum kind of going together. At least the ACC's putting them together. And you heard a lot of that from Judge Bledsoe. He literally asked the attorneys in the FSU case, well, who is the plaintiff here? You tell me who the plaintiff is here. Now, we know what he found to be true, or what he thinks is true, and that is that the ACC is the plaintiff in this case. Again, same case, same contract. The Clemson's trying to say that they're coming about this differently. It's not the same. Okay, it's the same. We're asking the same stuff. And I also, to get back to your point about combining these, the ACC's is giving that to Bledsoe as well and saying you should combine these, because if you don't, and you don't continue with this jurisdiction, again, back to what I said early on, this is going to be chaos. There could be 10 different jurisdictions, 12. This is yours to have. We've heard from Bledsoe that he kind of agrees with that. I think he will agree with that. Now, combining the cases, I'm not sure how that works necessarily, right, but in terms of justification and jurisdiction, he's going forward with this. This stays. It's not going to happen.
I do want to add one part I forgot to add. There is kind of one difference where Judge Bledsoe made a big point of, Florida State had telegraphed that they were going to file, and he made a big point of that.
He did.
Everybody knew this was happening. Your own board of trustees, they were, they're talking in public forums that they need to leave, they need to get out. A vote on it was published on your website. Whereas this is a little different. Clemson didn't do that. They kept their cards closer to the vest. Sure. But we do have the ACC alleging the misdirection.
Correct.
So that's the one interesting part where I don't think it's going to matter, but right, I'm interested to see how Judge Bledsoe addresses that. The telegraphing we're leaving compared to the hold your cards close to the vest and maybe have some misdirection, as right, the ACC is alleging. How he views those, that might be an interesting part.
That's a great point. That is the one difference. Everybody knew what was going on in FSU, for crying out loud. Even if you didn't know what was happening, you knew what was happening. Yeah. Clemson, not so much. Right. And the ACC tries to address that with the misdirection piece, which we've heard before, but of course they're bringing it back up here for a stay. But they also say they have belief that this all began in 2023. So maybe there's some items that they can come up with and give to the judge to say, hey, well, they did this and they did that. Clearly not as public as what we were seeing in FSU, but there may be something there. I agree. That is the one difference in this case that could be interesting. I don't think it will matter in the end about a stay here, but that's a good call out for sure. The last thing we want to talk about is this partial summary judgment in South Carolina. This just came out the end of last week, filed on May 30th. Clemson is seeking a summary judgment in Pickens County, South Carolina, and have asked for a hearing on or before July 12th. Remember that Clemson just received the full ESPN ACC media rights agreement, and they have put a lot of information in this filing. So guess what? There's a lot of black. I didn't even print it because there's a lot of redactions.
I saw one paragraph where it said something like, it's obvious to anyone that... And then the whole paragraph was black.
Yeah. So, but they do have it now. They can use it now. They clearly did use it in this filing in South Carolina for this partial summary judgment. So that's happening. The judgment here that they are looking to have is regarding Clemson's media rights and whether the ACC needs them in order to fulfill their obligation to ESPN under the media rights agreement. So that's why it's a partial summary judgment. They want that one piece. They want a judgment on that one piece. What happens to our media rights if we withdraw, basically? And not even what happens to them, but are they even needed for the ACC to fulfill their obligation to the media rights agreement? We just had a conversation about that with Doug Rohan. If our Clemson fans are watching this and you didn't watch the Doug Rohan one, check it out on our channel. I'll try to get it either the end of this or get a link up here if I remember to do it under when we produce this. But check that out. We start with that in that episode, and that could be the get out of jail free card here for Clemson and FSU. And so that's the piece they're going after here. And remember, they have the agreement. So that could be telling, hey, Seminole fans, if you're watching that could be telling here in terms of how they're addressing this. In terms of likelihood of success here for this partial summary judgment, very, very low. I've seen both of our special guests comment on this. Doug Rohan, David McKenzie, both are saying this is very unlikely. It's very difficult to have one of these get through, because basically I heard Doug on another podcast kind of say, like, the way this would have to work is the judge would have to look at these cases and look at the filings and the briefs and everything and basically say, okay, even if everything that the ACC is telling me is true,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It doesn't. They're still going to lose the case because everything that they said is true, but they're wrong enough that I can rule in favor of Clemson here. Again, it's just very unlikely that this will happen. But at the same time, it's Clemson trying to move that ball because everybody knows that special date, August 15th of this year, in terms of the announcement date on withdrawal. I don't think we're going to get answers for Clemson or FSU to be able to do anything by August 15th of this year. I mean, hell, look how long it's taking us to go through just some of these requests for dismissals and stays, for crying out loud. That's all we've gotten to at this point. So good try here by Clemson. I'll give them an A for effort. I don't think it's they're gonna get anything out of it. But hey, we want to hear this by July 12th. We can get more on the record. We can get more briefs out. Hey, they're pushing, so I'll give them, again, A for effort there, Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of going for a home run or a kill shot away from the very beginning.
Yep.
I have no idea if you're almost asking the judge to say, okay, this case is so obvious, it's not even worth making arguments.
Right.
To me, that seems really hard because then the judge, they're just setting them. To me, it seems like they would be setting themselves up to be overturned on appeal because they're not even hearing the arguments.
Yes.
It would have to be something so agreed, and we haven't seen all of the agreement and the verbiage and everything officially. So it would have to be something that was so obvious in there, it just seems like the chances are low of that. But they're going for it. They're swinging for the fences right away. Now, as far as the timeline and all that, I agree. There's no way we're going to get to any kind of judgments or anything by that August 15th.
Yeah.
But you never know with the settlements. That's the one thing I'll say. And maybe this is Clemson saying, okay, hey, we're going to take this last-ditch effort to just try and pop the balloon on the grant of rights and get our media rights. And if this works, great. If not, then hey, maybe we're willing to come to the settlement table. Maybe like this is their last-ditch effort before settling because maybe that August 15th date is so important for them. So we'll see. It's interesting. Home run. They're going for that home run kill shot. Nobody really expects it to happen, but boy, wouldn't that be some fireworks?
Holy cow!
if it did.
It would be massive fireworks if it did. And it might bring Clemson to the settlement table. I don't think it brings the ACC to the settlement table at all. What do they care? Why do they want to come to the settlement table before August 15th?
Well, yeah, I see your point there, but I mean, the thing is yes, you need both parties to want to come to settle.
Right.
But there's things going on both sides. That's one thing that maybe could help push, at least Clemson to make an offer. Like, hey,
sure, okay,
let's, okay, this didn't work. Can we just pay you $200 million to get out of jail free kind of thing?
Sure.
And
okay.
you never know when you make an offer. You never know, and if they can clean it up and get some money and whatever, who knows?
Good point. Well, you know what? Clemson is getting hot and heavy. We've done a ton on FSU. We finally get to get some goodies here on Clemson. And like I said, July 2nd will be that hearing in Mecklenburg. So that'll be here before we know it. And we will stay on all of this stuff. We're actually going to have an FSU update tomorrow as well. Some good stuff happening there. So, hey, if you like what we're doing here, make sure you give this one a like. Subscribe if you like our content. We're trucking our way, Steve, up to 2,000. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
We're talking about 2,000 subscribers right now, but people seem to like what we're doing. We like to do it for you, and we love the comments. Please leave your comments below. Tell us what you think about some of these things, especially this partial summary judgment for Pickens County, or partial summary judgment. I clearly have said that it's a long shot, but it is a kill shot for sure. So tell us what you guys think about that. Hey, we thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.